Welcome to Hotspot, a Swedish podcast that covers current topics concerning politics, religion, philosophy, technique, war, and every other topic that we might find interesting. Today we will talk to the Israeli ambassador to Sweden about the mounting opposition against Israel's war in Gaza and the increasing anti-Semitic sentiment in the West. Welcome to 1 hour of talk with me, Marco Strömberg, and the Israeli ambassador to Sweden, Ziv Nevo-Kullman. Welcome, Ambassador Ziv Nevo-Kullman, to Hotspot.
Shalom, thanks for having me.
It's an honor to have you here.
An honor for me.
Yes, you are the Israeli ambassador to Sweden, and this is the first place where you occupy the position as an ambassador.
It's my first ambassadorial role. It's my 5th diplomatic posting. I've been in the foreign ministry now, don't tell anyone, for 30 years.
Wow.
But Sweden is the first time I become an ambassador.
Yeah, but I read somewhere that Sweden was your first choice as a career diplomat, sorry. How come that you're so interested in Sweden?
Well, it's a cool place, isn't it? It's beautiful. Sweden has a long tradition of a friendship to Israel. We remember all the cool Swedes who came to kibbutzim in Israel.
In the 60s and 70s?
Yeah, when, I'm probably, when I was born, but I'm also a big ABBA fan. But seriously, I think Sweden is a big challenge for any Israeli diplomat because of the long history of friendship, but also the challenges that our bilateral relationship has faced. So the potential is great. And I have to say that it's been rewarding 4-year posting for me so far.
And a lot of things have happened during these 4 years you have been in Sweden.
Absolutely. A lot of good things for the bilateral relations, and of course a lot of complicated things when it comes to Israel, the war, just representing Israel anywhere around the world in a time of crisis, in a time of great stress in Israel, problems for the Jewish communities worldwide. So I have to say that for me, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's an ongoing challenge to represent my country in these times, particularly in Sweden.
Israel is very common in the spotlight. I mean, if you compare to the size of the country, it's always on top news. How come that Israel is always in the spotlight compared to other countries of the same size?
That's a very big question. It's a whole topic. I mean, we could discuss it over the years. We could say that historically, Israel is the Holy Land. That has always been the center of attention for many religions, not only the Jewish people, but Christian communities, Muslim faith. So it is the Holy Land. It is a center that, for geopolitical reasons, has always been important for great powers and smaller powers, and it's always been on the attention. And you could also say that 77 years ago, a miracle happened and the State of Israel was created. And ever since, we've also had world attention. First of all, for being the miracle that we are. For many years, it was perhaps astonishment of the achievements of a small socialist country with a system, for utopian systems such as the kibbutz. But it could also be astonishment of Israel's achievements in science, or Israel being the startup nation. So of course there's always been attention on Israel on the spot. But of course, with the war going on, since October 7th, even intensifying the attention that we have anyway in international media.
And what does the Israelis think about being so covered in the news, many times with negative connotations? What do the ordinary people in Israel think about this?
I think it's not just a question for Israelis, it's also a question for Jewish communities around the world. Of course, we would be happy to be left alone We would be happy not to be attacked. We would be happy not to be in the center of attention. We would be happy to be treated like any other country, or any other country that is in a war, or any other democracy that finds itself in a situation of war. But it's something that we have come to be used to. And I've learned that being an Israeli diplomat, not only in Sweden, but in other places that I was posted. When you say that you're from Israel, the reactions are never neutral. They can be negative, but I have to say they can also be positive. The amount of support that Israel gets from different communities, you would be surprised of places in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, all over the world. When you say that you're from Israel, and for different reasons, they don't have necessarily to be religious reasons. It could also be for the good that Israel does in these countries, for development aid, for example. So Israel, or Israeli diplomats, or anyone coming from Israel, the minute you expose yourself, when you present yourself as an Israeli or an Israeli diplomat, you always get more than just a very neutral answer or neutral comment.
So you must be also mentally strong to be an Israeli diplomat, to meet all these both positive and negative reactions towards you.
That's what we're trained for from a very young age. We're Israeli, and and I think the Jewish communities are also very resilient and have shown their resilience throughout the years.
We're sitting here in the studio here at Värner idag, and there's one occasion that has been on top of the news, and Israel is in the center of this, and that's the war in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023. When it was not only the war in Gaza, but Iran, through all these proxy armies, attacked you from Yemen, from Lebanon, and so on. How do you cope as a small nation with both the military combat in Gaza, and you had a two-front war with Lebanon, with the Hezbollah, and the mounting opposition against you in the, not least in the press, but also the sentiment all over, generally speaking, in the West? How do you cope with this multiple front war?
So, as you mentioned, this is a multi-front war. We were attacked in 7 fronts. And of course, the Iranian influence didn't start in October 7th. We're talking since the Iranian Revolution. This is a regime that calls for the destruction of the State of Israel, and is doing so through its different proxies, Hamas being just one of them, and we have faced several fronts. It's not the first time that Israel is in a war with several fronts. If you remember our War of Independence, if you remember the 6-Day War, if you remember Yom Kippur War, it's something that we are regretfully that we are used to. I have to say that militarily we have been extremely successful in combating Iran and its proxies, and combating and every different aspect and every different front. It is a different battle. It is one over the public opinion or the support of governments, that we also have to face criticism when it comes from our friends and who we thought were our friends in the West. So it's a different aspect. It's a different battle, and it's something that we have been facing throughout, I would say, our history.
And how do you face that? Because that must be the most difficult battle to have, the opposition around the world, because it also affects governments that you have to work together with, or can really put a strong pressure on you.
Well, first of all, conviction. Remember, this is I mean, we didn't want this war. We didn't start this war. We were attacked on October 7th. And the reason that this war broke out is because Israel wants to bring back its hostages. Israel wants to eliminate Hamas's control over Gaza. Israel wants to secure its borders against any attacks from Gaza or from any other front. This is why this war started, and this is how this war could end. This war could end tomorrow. Once Hamas releases the 58 hostages that it still holds, that most of them are not even alive. once Hamas brings back the remaining hostages, those who need to be buried and those who need to be reunited with their families, and once it gives up power over Gaza, which is going to be part of the day after solution in any case, this war could end instantly.
The main criticism against Israel has been, or one of the main criticisms has been that you have hindered the food delivery, giving the basic needs of water, electricity. As we are speaking right now, there have been like up to 11 weeks of you holding back the deliveries. You have been delivering again now the last days. Why are you keeping back the deliveries of food to Gaza?
Let's be very clear. The ones who have caused the human suffering, the catastrophe in Gaza are Hamas. Hamas is in charge of most of the water supply and energy supply to the Palestinians in Gaza. Israel is only responsible for less than 20% of the water that is supposed to go in. And the energy lines that most of them are supplied by Hamas, but the energy lines that come from Israel were actually destroyed by Hamas in the October 7th attack. And we are the ones that actually recreated them. So that's one very important element, that Hamas is responsible for the suffering of the Palestinian people. Now, when it comes to Israel's responsibility, first of all, Israel has no intention and no obligation under international humanitarian law to feed its enemy. International law says specifically that a country at war doesn't under any circumstance have to deliver military advantage to its enemy. Now, what happened in the first phase of the ceasefire, when 33 hostages did return, most of them were alive, what happened then during those 42 days is that Hamas took over the international aid that went in. More than 25,000 trucks went in. They filled in all of the supplies, all of the need for months to come. And unfortunately, Hamas took over the supplies. They loot them. They feed their own people. For the first time, they were able to pay salaries to their militants since the beginning of the war. And how did they get money to pay the salaries? They sell the aid. So it means that aid that comes in through the generosity of the international community becomes part of Hamas's war machine. And this is something that Israel cannot allow. We monitor the situation on the ground on a daily basis. When we see that certain goods have been depleted, we let them in. And this is what we've been doing over the last few days. Hundreds of trucks go in on a daily basis, even if we know that at least 10% of them, we don't know the exact figures because we are not on the ground, but at least 10% of what goes in is being looted and being hijacked and being misused by Hamas terrorists.
But since you have a military in place in Gaza, can't you secure feeding stations where you can guarantee that Hamas is not taking over the food supplies, but you distribute it yourself?
So due to the lack, unfortunately, the international community and the UN mechanisms such as UNRWA have been overtaken by Hamas and become part of its system. We are setting up a different system, an alternative system, together with our American friends, and we set up the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, which is a different way of distributing the food and the aid to the people who need it and not to Hamas. So this is exactly the mechanism that is being set up as we're speaking to give a response to the challenges on the ground.
Have you already implemented this?
It's being implemented on these very days.
And how has it been working so far?
Well, the idea is to create different zones where food can be distributed to civilians, to people who are not a part of the Hamas military regime, terrorist infrastructure. It is actually to the people who are in need. And it's something that has been done in the past. For example, the way that Americans fed areas in Iraq that were under American control at the time. This is something that has been done in recent history and can be done again. And the idea is to feed the civilians in Gaza and not to feed your enemy, not to feed Hamas.
The Gaza Strip borders two nations, Israel and Egypt. Why can't the UN distribute it through Egypt and the Rafah crossing?
That's a very tricky question. You know, Egypt has a very important role. Egypt has a peace agreement with Israel. It's a strategic agreement that we've had for more than 45 years. And Egypt has a role. Egypt also has its own issues with Islamic brothers that are a sister party to Hamas. Having said all of that, one could also ask questions about Egypt's role. Egypt's role when it came to smuggling goods into the Gaza Strip through Rafah. And right now, what is Egypt doing? Or what are other Arab countries doing when it comes to delivering aid? When it comes to opening up their borders? You know that Arab countries have not accepted not even one single Palestinian refugee since the beginning of the war. So these are questions that we need to ask many in the Arab world and the international community that puts all the criticism on Israel needs to ask these questions as well.
But is there an entry point between Egypt and Gaza that is open right now for aid? There's not.
There is not. I mean, there are crossings that we monitor, and they come from different parts of the Strip. But there is no direct access from Egypt into the Gaza Strip.
Is it you who have stopped that entry point?
It is in accordance with Egypt. So that right now is not something that is possible, and that also puts all the pressure on Israel. Whereas you could ask why the Arab neighbors are not doing more.
Trump has said that he would like Jordan and Egypt to receive the refugees from Gaza. There's a big portion of the Gazan citizens that said that they would like to move on if they were given the opportunity. You're destroying a lot of the infrastructure, schools, hospitals, maybe the power grid as well. Is this purposefully to weaken Hamas, and at the same time it's also harming the civilians? Is this by purpose you're doing it, or is it like because they are hiding behind these different kind of installations?
Of course, nothing is done intentionally. The one who are destroying their own infrastructure and causing problems to their own, suffering to their own civilians are Hamas, simply by hiding behind this infrastructure. When you are hiding behind schools, hospitals, even mosques, don't be surprised that we have no choice and we have to attack. These infrastructures in order to eliminate the terrorists. So Israel is not deliberately destroying infrastructure. The infrastructure is there for the welfare of the Palestinian people. Hamas is the one that is abusing this. And when it comes to your question about the intention of civilians leaving Gaza, our position is that if Palestinians want to leave the Gaza Strip of their own will, and they want to move to countries that are opening their borders and welcoming them out of their own will, if this is part of a greater deal that means that the region will be developed in some way, and there's a give and take for every country that is part of it, in that case, we think that this could be a way for a better solution, because we don't want a vicious circle to continue. The vicious circle means that every time that there is a round of violence, infrastructure is destroyed because of the reasons of its being abused by Hamas, and then aid comes in, and instead of using it for the welfare of the people, it is used again for building infrastructure, a terrorist infrastructure, building up the Hamas military capabilities within these civilian areas. So it's more of the same, and we hope that with the day after, we could actually find a way to rebuild Gaza, where there will no longer be a threat of October 7th repeating itself.
But when you attack an installation where there's a lot of feelings around, like a hospital or school and so on, you know there's a Hamas fighter behind there. You take into consideration that if we attack this, we kill maybe 20 people, 20 soldiers, But the backlash is so much bigger because it's used against us in the opinion against us in the media, in the West, and so on. How do you consider these? Of course, you are not the military person, you are a diplomat, but this is the reality that you are facing. Is it worth it to send a missile where is a Hamas warrior behind these installations?
This is part of Hamas's plan. This is how they planned the attack and what would happen afterwards. They've been preparing for this war for years. Their plan is that they use the civilians as their own shields, and they are, I mean, basically they planned this. This is a modern war happening in a highly densely populated urban area where Hamas was ready and prepared for this, meaning that they used every possible civilian infrastructure. If it is an UNRWA infrastructure, if it's an international hospital or school, they're using it. And they want their own suffering. That's part of their propaganda war. Now, when it comes to the calculations of Israel, you know, it's easy to sit here in a nice studio in Uppsala and think about what is worth and what is not worth. When you are protecting your civilians, we're protecting our citizens, we're protecting our communities, not just around Gaza, because, you know, the missiles they can reach all the way to the center of Israel. We have to make sure that we destroy the infrastructure. We're doing that within international humanitarian law, meaning that if we know that civilians are going to be involved, we do everything we can to avoid it. Having said that, this is a war. This is a bloody war. This is a difficult war. I know it's hard for people in Sweden who have been living in a peaceful place for more than 200 years to understand that. But when you are caught up in a war, when your enemy prepared this war and did everything it can to entrench itself and you within a highly densely populated area, this is what happens tragically in such a situation.
But Hamas can never defeat Israel militarily. When you attack these installations, they know that they are forming a stronger weapon against you, the opinion around the world. Are you taking the bait? As you said, it's hard. It's easy for us to sit here and peacefully and, you know, judge and so on. But just looking at it in a logic way, are you taking the bait that they actually calculated that you should do this, and then you have a stronger enemy, if I will say that, the world opinion against you, and that's the place where it actually can be beaten?
I think it's not a question of taking the bait or world opinion. It's a question of security. It's a question of survival. What happened on October 7th cannot happen again. We still have communities around the Gaza Strip and also communities in the north that have not gone back home yet, that are still displaced. So it's the role of any government to protect its civilians. It's the role of any government to bring back its hostages. How would you react if on one day 1,200 people would be murdered in the worst pogrom since the Holocaust, 250 people taken out of their beds or music festival, hijacked into a hostile territory? How would you react? So the question is not of a bait or what people think or don't think about Israel. The question is what is the role of a country that has to fight for its survival, that has to fight for its own people and for its own security, what a country has to do, still remaining a democracy, still respecting the rules of international law, when it's combating jihadists, terrorists who have no respect for anything, especially not for human rights or the humanitarian conditions of our hostages.
Does this frustrate you that we are trying to apply our logic in the West, where there's a negotiation, there's a meaning of understanding between each other, and the logic that you have to face in the Middle East, where you face, as you say, jihadist, religious fanatics who are willing to die to destroy you? Is that a big frustration for you as a nation?
I would say it's a big challenge. But, you know, challenges, you also have achievements. And I think there's bigger understanding in the West that what Israel is facing right now is something that could affect the entire world. Our struggle could be the struggle of other countries. If Israel loses against these jihadists, against these people who are calling for our destruction, it's not just the destruction of the state of Israel, it's the destruction of the values that are so dear to all of us, values such as democracy, freedom, rule of law. Israel is at the forefront of this battle. So I think there is more understanding from governments and from individuals, many of the people perhaps who are watching us right now, who understand that what Israel is facing is not just a war with Hamas, it is a war with Hamas, but it's also a war against the Iranian Revolution and everything it stands for, and it's also a war for the values that are dear to all of us. And I think this is why we will win.
When we talk about Iran, that's very far away from us here in Sweden, and even, you know, these values you talk about is quite abstract questions for many people who have their everyday life. We have a lot of terrorist attacks in Europe, sometimes on a weekly basis. Are these things, do you think, from your point of view as Israeli, helping people to understand what you are facing, that these people are people you cannot negotiate with?
Well, I don't think that Iran is so far away from the Swedish context. First of all, if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, you know, the same drones that are killing Ukrainian civilians, these are Iranian-made drones.
Shaheds.
They're also used against us. Terrorist threats in Sweden, it's been revealed by SEPO and Israeli agencies that Iran has used or tried to use different gangs as proxies to attack Israeli and Jewish targets in this country. So you don't need just Israel or the Gulf states to tell you that Iran is a danger for the region. Iran is a danger for the entire world, and I think that you can feel it in different places that are outside our region.
If you go back to the conflict in Gaza, there came numbers that 53,000 people have died from October the 7th, 2023 up to now. And there was a professor at the University of Chicago, Professor Pape, a military historian. He said that more people have died proportionally compared to the population during this war than World War II. What do you say about these numbers?
I don't know how he makes his calculations. First of all, the 53,000, let's break that. It comes from Hamas-controlled so-called Ministry of Health. So to begin with, we don't know if these numbers are correct or not. Then, no one says that these are, half of them or 1/3 of them, no one says how many of them were actually terrorist militants that we were targeting, which is part of a legitimate war against our enemy. So you take this number as a whole and you say that all of them were innocent civilians. That is completely untrue. And then you don't even calculate how many of them died, if we talk about the civilians, the ones that were not involved, the ones that tragically got caught up in a war. You do not say how many of them were killed by their own missiles. We know that at least, when Hamas was shooting, Hamas and Islamic Jihad were shooting daily, on a daily basis, were shooting at our communities, missiles of all kinds of sorts. Many of them being quite primitive and some of them being quite sophisticated, depends on the supplies. But at least 25% of them fell short. And they don't have a system like we have. We invest in protecting our civilians. So we have an Iron Dome. So we don't have that amount of casualties. They, on the contrary, are using their civilians as a propaganda tool. So you're saying 53,000. Have you actually checked these numbers? And have you checked the proportions? Have you checked how many of them were militants? And then you compare it, and this is outrageous. And then you compare it to World War II. What we're facing in Gaza now has no equivalence in the history of urban battlefield. That your enemy entrenches itself, prepares for so many years, does everything it can to make its civilians vulnerable, and then when civilians get caught up in this tragedy, the entire world blames Israel.
Among these 53,000, do you think there's people who have died a natural death during this time as well? We talked about 2.5% of the population.
That is also possible, since I don't know the figures. I mean, they come from an enemy entity. Everybody is quoting these figures as if they were holy. Holy coming from a reliable source, which is not. So we have to calculate all of this together. And Marco, having said all of that, I know that in a war, in a tragic war, a war that we didn't start, a war that we didn't want, in this tragedy, civilians are regretfully caught up. There are civilians, there are uninvolved people that have died. This is not intentionally. If there's an intention, it's from the other side. So blaming Israel for all the wrongdoing, for everything bad that is happening in the Gaza Strip, is ignoring the reality as it is.
In the Gaza, we saw, I think it was in October 2023, there was a Washington Post survey. I think 53 or 57% of the people supported Hamas. Do you have any more accurate numbers as for 2025, how the support for Hamas has shifted? Same, increased or decreased?
Difficult to tell. First of all, we cannot run polls in Gaza right now. It's not that you can call people and do a poll. We have seen demonstrations against Hamas for the first time. These demonstrations are real. People are angry. They're angry at the catastrophe that Hamas has brought upon them. So obviously there's a lot of anger. But remember, this is not a democracy. Hamas took over in a military coup. We do not know what is the real percentage of support in Hamas. What is quite unfortunate and shocking is that in the West Bank, so in Judea and Samaria, if you had elections there, and you know they haven't had elections for many years because the Palestinian Authority is anything but democratic, but if they had elections there today, according to recent polls, 80 to 85% of the Palestinians living there would choose Hamas. So anyone who's pushing Israel into kind of like, oh, you need to speak to the moderates, you need to speak to the pragmatic Palestinians who are like the Palestinian Authority, remember that the minute they have elections, if these are fair and open elections, Hamas is going to take over that part as well, and that is the end of any sort of cooperation between Israel and the Palestinians.
So how do you cope with this then? I mean, what's the long-term plan? I saw the Arab Youth Survey where they asked if they want to reconcile with the Israelis. I think the number in UAE was like 70% or even higher. The lowest number in the whole Middle East was the Palestinians. It was 0 actually among the young people. What is your long-term plan?
It's a difficult question, and I'm not sure that we will see this conflict resolved in our lifetime. But you mentioned something which is quite true, that in the wider Arab world, there is more appreciation for Israel, less tolerance. I think a lot of Arab countries have lost patience with the Palestinians. Enough is enough, and how long can you drag the entire region into tragedy? And I think there are more, it depends on the country, but there are more countries, and you could say that this is the base for the Abraham Accords, because there are more countries that see the region in a broader, much, I would say, realistic perspective, and saying, wait a minute, our biggest problem is not the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, our biggest problem is Iran. Our biggest problem is our countries becoming unstable. We want to have economic development. We want to have prosperity. We want to develop. We want to take examples from Israel, how it means, how do you make the desert bloom? Or how do you find sustainable solutions for water? This is the approach that most Arab regimes have taken. Unfortunately, not necessarily in the Arab street, where the public opinion is still very hostile towards Israel, so the regimes have to kind of like balance that. But I would say that most people in the Arab world, even if they don't particularly like Israel or what Israel is doing, they understand that for the better future of the region, it will be good if we came up with a pragmatic solution where we talk more about economic development, more about the possibilities for making our region a better one.
What is prospect, according to you, is that the Abraham Accord will succeed, that you will have lasting cooperation in the Middle East between Israel and its Arabic neighbors on a more deeper level?
Well, first of all, the Abraham Accords are a big success, and they've upheld even in these turbulent times. I mean, if you look at, for example, the airlines that are flying into Israel constantly, so many European carriers have canceled their flights to Israel. They go on and off depending on, you know, if a Houthi missile lands in the vicinity of our international airport. You know which airline continues to fly non-stop to Israel despite maybe they stopped 1 or 2 days during the entire war? These are the Emirati airlines. So if it is Fly Dubai or Etihad, they have been flying constantly to Israel. And the concept of the Abraham Accord, of course, with some criticism and some questions from our Emirati friend and other allies of or members, signatories of the Abraham Accord, but we understand that that is a way to move forward. And you know, when we talk about the future of Gaza, I think that, you know, it's much wiser and better for the region if the money that pours in Gaza the day after would be used to make it into, you know, used for high-rises rather than tunnels. And take the example of Dubai, take the example of Singapore, take the example of small, prosperous states, areas where you can develop yourself economically. The potential is skyrocketing.
Let's go to Europe and see the sentiment in Europe and in Sweden in particular. We had a Eurovision. Yes,
really?
Yeah, and you are a big fan, as I understand, of the Eurovision. There was a big discrepancy between the vote of the people and the vote of the professional jury. In some countries, like in Spain, so the public service accused that there was some kind of manipulation because of the big discrepancy. Even the Belgian TV also asked for a probe. What is your take of what happened during the Eurovision, both in Malmö, but also in Switzerland, and especially the talks about that there's some kind of manipulation behind the people's vote?
There's always talk of manipulation, of some kind of conspiracy, who controls the votes. I think the facts are very simple. For the second year in a row, the Israeli songs were good, the performers were strong, and the more the public service became the debate became politicized, I think there was outrage among the public. You've mentioned Spain. The Spanish public broadcaster put a special slide on TV just before the Israeli song was performed, reminding the viewers that they cannot remain silent and they should think about Palestinian children. This is against the regulations of EBU. You are politicizing the competition. And what did the Spanish public do in return? Give Israel 12 points. Now, how many Jews live in Spain? Remember, most of them were expelled more than 500 years ago. Not many Jews live in Spain. And the Spanish in general is not known to be very Israeli friendly. But when you see the public broadcaster, the one that is supposed to be objective under the rules of the competition, taking such great effort to remind everyone that this country shouldn't be here. You shouldn't vote for this song. When you are politicizing it from your side, don't be surprised if there's a backlash from the audience who looks at it and says, but she's a great singer. The song is amazing. Her personal story, you know, the fact that she survived the Nova Music Festival and she's rising here like a phoenix from the ashes of her friends who died, and everything that she had to go through in the last year and a half. And she manages to sing. Yuval Raphael manages to sing brilliantly despite all the boos. I can understand that many people wanted to vote for her. So I think it's very clear. If you politicize the competition, if you treat Israel in a bad way, as was the case last year and this year, I think that most people in the public are just not going to like that.
So do you see this as, this is a way for the silent majority that maybe even stands behind Israel, even in its war, to make their voices known through the Eurovision?
I think that's one example, but I also think that at the end of the day, we can sit here and talk about the political aspects in this way or the other way. I think at the bottom line, if you send a good song and if you send good performers who can perform live despite all of the disturbances and they give a good show, the public loves them. I'm sorry that for the second year in a row, the juries do not see that.
And last year we had it in Sweden. What was your thoughts about how they treated the Israeli? I don't remember the name of her.
Eden Golan.
Eden Golan, yes. What did you make of the last year, how he was treated in Sweden?
You mentioned that I'm a Eurovision fan, and I was very excited when Loreen won because I said, wow, great, Eurovision is coming to Sweden. And then, of course, the war started, and I understood that it's not going to be a usual year, and the decision to host it in Malmö, you know, for a competition that is supposed to unite, you know, united by love is the slogan of EBU. There was everything but love in the streets of Malmö and also inside the arena. But I said it all along. You know, I gave a lot of interviews a year ago ahead of Eurovision in Malmö. And you know, the Israeli media coverage of Malmö was horrible. They described the city as the most anti-Semitic place in Europe, and they described the whole atmosphere against the Israeli delegation as a very, very, very hostile one. And I remember me going on Israeli media, different interviews that I gave. I was protecting. I found it unfair. I thought that these extreme people that were united by hate from all over Europe, I thought that they were giving Malmö, the competition, they were giving Sweden a bad reputation. And I told everyone in Israel, wait and see. Wait and see what wait and see what the European public is going to say. And we got 12 points from Sweden and from most of European countries. And that was proof that the public was with us, and the public did understand that Israel was maltreated and that wasn't fair.
Does this boost you, the Israelis? That, I mean, you get the impression everybody's against us. Of course, those things, you know, gets into your mind. But when you see these 12 points, it's more than probably only the song, it's also a support for Israel. Does this boost the Israelis and feel that we have people that stand behind us?
Well, when I see the strong Israeli performers performing well despite all of these, despite the boos and all of the hatred, that gives me hope. I mean, we are strong, we are resilient, and of course, we have many friends in Europe that perhaps when it's behind, you know, televoting, when you don't know their names, when they're not exposed, when they're not afraid to show that they actually support us, then yes, we have much more support than we can actually imagine.
Let's go to Sweden now. You work a lot, of course, with the relationship with the Swedish government, with the parliamentarians and so on. What is your relationship, Israel's relationship, to the current Swedish government of today? We have had our ups and downs. It's been a very complicated relationship for a long time. What do you make of today's government's attitude towards Israel?
We have an open dialogue with the Swedish governments. You know, I've been here for 4 years, so I've worked with 2 different governments. I accompanied 3 foreign ministers, 1 from the previous government and 2 from Tobias Billström and Minister Malmö Stengaard to Israel. So I've seen the relationships become better and more intimate in our dialogue, also when we get criticism. But I would say that the relationship is good, basically to the fact that we talk and we exchange. And even if we are not always on the same page, we at least have the channels of communication open. That is a big improvement.
If we look at maybe the lowest point was when Margot Wallström was our foreign minister, and she was actually banned from Israel. After her came Ann Linde, and which improved the relationships to Israel. What do you say? We are recording this the Monday, 25th of May. I think it was yesterday. She went out on Twitter and said,
Margot Wallström.
Yes, that the Israeli government is controlling the Swedish government. Yeah.
Well, I accompanied Ann Linde on her visit to Israel, and I know that the last years of the Stefan Löfven's government, there was a great effort by the Social Democrats to improve the relations with Israel. It's a big party with different fractions, not all of them very friendly to Israel. We see that now. That is internal Swedish politics, which I think is taking use of the Middle East conflict for its own political internal gains. Which is very unfortunate and very unfair. And when we are accused of, these are conspiracy theories, that we are controlling the world, or we are controlling politicians or TDO group, these are these are ridiculous accusations that I'm strongly against.
What is your general impression of the Swedish media, how they cover Israel? Of course, there's from all sides, but what's your general impression of the Swedish media? Is it fair?
Depends on the day. It's very intense, so there's a lot to cover. In general, I have to say that I, as a diplomat, as a representative of the State of Israel, somebody who comes from a democracy, I very, very seldomly criticize the media, simply because I understand the importance of media, the importance of freedom of expression and freedom of press in a democracy. Meaning, journalists have their role, I have mine. I do the best I can in my job, and I expect journalists to do the best in their job. I expect them to base their reporting on facts. I expect them to be as objective as they can, and I expect them not to spread fake news when they know that they haven't really checked the data, and the fact that it appeared in some international outlet doesn't mean that you can automatically quote it here in Sweden. These are my expectations. Now, what happens when these expectations are not met? Let's say I open the newspaper, or I see something on TV that upsets me. I believe that it's the role of the Swedes, the taxpayers, or the people who are reading that certain newspaper or listening to that program to complain. If I complain, it looks as if I do not understand the role of democracy. It looks as if I'm coming from some kind of dictatorship, and that's the last thing I can say. If you open Israeli media, if you listen to Israeli media, you will see that there's lots of criticism of the government every day. So it's something that we are used to in a democracy. I think that Swedish media does its job. I do my job. And if somebody is not happy with the way they see Israel being treated in Swedish media, as Swedish viewers or Swedish taxpayers, I think it's up to them to complain about it.
We had the news here that 14,000 children would die within 48 hours if you didn't let the deliveries come in.
Fake. That was fake.
Yeah. But how do you, this kind of news comes over and over again. It's not your job as an ambassador, of course, but for the government of Israel, how do you tackle this? You cannot control, of course, the media houses, even if that's a conspiracy theory that the Israeli Jews do that. But that is a reality, and it's a very powerful, force, a phenomenon that really undercuts your credibility among people and governments and so on. Even if it's debunked, 24 hours later, it's still when it comes over and over again. Do you have any kind of tactic how to deal with these things? Because it's really a powerful force against you.
Stay calm and stick to the facts. That's what I try to do, and that's what I expect other people who are talking about this very, very complicated issue to do. And when these false accusations appear, it could be 14,000, oops, we thought it was, we said 48 hours, but actually it may be in a year. Or babies freezing in Gaza, well, check the weather, it was only 8 degrees. Or Israel killed, an Israeli missile killed 50 people in a hospital. No, it was actually Islamic. Stay calm, stick to the facts. When there is an obsession around Israel and everything is done just to show that Israel is not working properly, and when you are like, there's an obsession about trying to blame you, then there's no wonder that these lies pop up. And you know, spreading lies about Israel is not just about bad journalism. It's not just about, oops, we made a mistake, maybe we'll correct it, maybe we won't. It creates demonstrations. It creates an environment of incitement. It moves people into the streets calling for the destruction of the state of Israel, calling for violence. And this affects the entire world. It doesn't just affect our region. So when people are exposed to false accusations, when Israel is accused with no base to, for example, conducting genocide, and people use this word as if it was the most banal thing you can use in the dictionary.
What is your comment on the accusation of genocide?
That they are completely false.
Based on?
First of all, let's talk about the procedure. South Africa takes us to court. The motives of South Africa are very questionable. I mean, it's part of the Russian, Iranian, it's part of a certain axis, why exactly South Africa was chosen to be the judiciary arm of Hamas. South Africa takes you to court. Israel is part of the ICJ. Hamas is not part of anything. So Israel is accused of something which you can't accuse the other side. The court so far has not found any base for the accusations. There were not any preliminary measures. Israel was told that it has to conduct itself in Rafah in a way that doesn't contradict international law, which is exactly the way we're operating. Now, when someone takes you to court, it may take you years to clear your name. This is what this procedure is going to be like. So first of all, you can't, from the legal perspective, you can't say that Israel is conducting genocide, since when the people accusing us, if they're politicians or if they are professors, if they are journalists, since when did they take the role of the ICJ? So that's the first from the procedure point of view. Now from content, do you see Israel intending to destroy another nation? Is there an intention here? Is this something that we do intentionally? The only thing that I can see intentionally is the genocidal attempt by Hamas to kill Israelis on October 7th. They are genocidal. That is part of their charter. So if there's anyone that one could use this word, and I don't use this word very easily. This is a term that was created after World War II to prevent from these atrocities from happening again. You cannot use it and banalize it. That's definitely not part of why this whole mechanism, this whole international court was created.
Okay, let me go back to the Swedish government. This Saturday there was an article, debate, or what do you call it, where the three party leaders in the government, from the Liberals, the Christian Democrats, and the Moderate Party, they said that they will be a driving force to try to create sanctions against what they call extremist ministers who support the settlers on the West Bank and who oppose the two-state solution. And also that they will push to see if Israel complies with the agreement with the EU to follow the human rights. What is your comment on this declaration? We talked about it yesterday, the public service on agenda.
As I said, we have a good relationship with the Swedish government and an open dialogue, and this kind of exchange is something that we also do in my meetings in the foreign ministry. We are surprised that the Swedish government chooses to put all the pressure on Israel. You know, I've accompanied the foreign minister to Israel, and I saw the impact on her by visiting Nir Oz, seeing the kibbutz that was devastated.
The current or the former?
Both, actually.
Okay.
But the last visit, when I went to Israel with Minister Malma Stengard, we went to Nir Oz and then we went to the Nova Music Festival. I could see the effect on her. She was emotionally taken by the catastrophe and what she saw. You cannot, on the one hand, say that Israel has the right to defend itself and that Hamas is not part of the day after. So Hamas is not part of the future of Gaza. And on the other hand, don't support Israel in its fight against Hamas. You have to choose your sides. You cannot put all the pressure on one side. It makes it appear as if it's a prize for Hamas. Hamas attacked Israel. Israel is defending itself. And by putting all the criticism on Israel, we're putting right now military pressure on Hamas because we think that this is the only way that the remaining hostages will be released and Hamas will give up power over Gaza. So we're putting all the pressure on Hamas and the West is putting all the pressure on Israel. That's giving Hamas a prize. And these are things that we say in our open dialogue with the Swedish government.
Okay, so they have already discussed these things because they went out publicly and say they're going to try to push pressure on some of your ministers.
Well, there was a meeting last week. It's the FAC. It's the meeting of foreign ministers that takes place once a month in Brussels, and that's where Sweden, as part of the EU, takes part in such discussions. The proposal to sanction Israeli ministers did not pass because there was no consensus. These proposals can only pass if there's a consensus between all the member states, and that wasn't reached. And the European Union also decided to make some kind of exercise. It's not even a review. If you listen to the public statement in the press conference that was given by the High Representative, by Kallas, after that meeting, they are going to check if for some reason Israel is not in compliance with international law. So Sweden's actions are within the actions of the EU. We see the Association Council, the agreement between Israel and the EU, something that is beneficial to both parts, and we don't think this should be used as a political instrument, especially not if it gives Hamas a prize.
We spoke in the beginning about the 7-front war. Is there an 8th front that's opened up right now against your diplomats and your diplomatic installations? We saw in Washington, D.C., who 2 of your staff, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram, was shot in cold blood. Here in Stockholm, the embassy is attacked several times. One time, I think they also threw in a hand grenade. Do you think, you think that we are seeing now, because of the sentiment in the West, that they will also start to attack your diplomatic installations?
So we have seen a dramatic increase on the threats against Israeli missions around the world since October 7th. A dramatic increase in the threats, and as you've mentioned, here in Sweden we had our share of incidents of attacks against an embassy operating in the center of Stockholm. What happened last week in Washington, D.C. is devastating. We lost 2 of our brilliant members of our diplomatic team in our embassy in the United States. Yaron and Sarah, they were brilliant young professionals. They were supposed to be engaged this week in Jerusalem, and it's a tragic loss. We have to remember that this comes after a long period of incitement. Incitement that you see in the media, that you see in universities, false accusations such as genocide or deliberate starvation of children, and people hear these accusations and they are radicalized by them. We have to remember that there is a price to incitement, there is a price to hate, there's a price to anti-Semitism. Now, unfortunately, tragically, these 2 young Israeli diplomats were murdered. And we have to remain vigilant because this could happen in other places around the world. And this could also happen not against Israeli missions and Israeli targets, but they're also targeting Jewish installations. You know, it didn't happen outside the Israeli embassy. It happened outside the Jewish Museum. This was an event organized by the American Jewish Committee, AJC. This was an event for young diplomats from different countries around the world that were actually supposed to talk about peaceful solutions between Israelis and Palestinians. That's where the attack happened. So it could happen anywhere around the world.
Here in Sweden, you face something very new. That was that the Iranians used a criminal gang to send teenagers to attack your embassy. What do you make of that? Is that a pattern you start to see, that they are using criminal gangs not only in Sweden but maybe in other countries as well, to use them as proxies? Yes, they are using the Houthis or the Hamas or the Hezbollah.
That is a very unfortunate development. The good news is that it's taken seriously by the Swedish authorities, the Israeli authorities. There are a lot of people that are working 24 hours, 7 days a week to make us safe, and that's taken very seriously. You also have to remember, and this is also part of the things that were revealed, that the Iranians have also hired cells and they wanted to assassinate Jews in this country. Jews that were, one of them we know because he spoke about it, is the chairman of the Jewish communities, simply because they were accused of supporting Israel. This is anti-Semitic. When you target Jews, you automatically accuse them of being supporters of the State of Israel. And it's an attack on Swedish soil against Swedish citizens, and it's totally unacceptable.
Well, thank you very much that you came, Ambassador. It's been a very interesting hour. We are coming to our end, so I want to thank you that you came.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I hope the next time we meet will be in a more peaceful setting. Maybe we could meet in Jerusalem and do a special hotspot from the Holy Land.
That would be very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and you are welcome next week with new programs to Hotspot. Thank you so much.